it's easy to overthink yourself and and I think the 49ers did it several years ago when they took Trey Lance. They took this just smaller school guy. Like, that's not usually the way it works out, right? And I think the Eagles, for example, most of the best 49ers players come from big programs, right? Or big conferences. Deebo Samuel was one of the best players in the SEC. George Kittle, Iowa. Trent Williams, Oklahoma. Nick Bosa, Ohio State. Like, their better players come from big programs. Hufanga, USC. And I think the Eagles, and I talked about it with Colin, they don't waste any time anymore on the little schools or overthinking it with the schools, the non-Power 5 programs. When you look at their draft this year, they took 3 players from Georgia. 3. Obviously, their first 2 picks, but they took a corner in the later rounds. And they also, I think their 3rd round pick was an Illinois DB, who Illinois last year had one of their better seasons in recent memory with Bielema and was one of the better defenses in the country. Like, they are taking Power 5 programs that are having a lot of success. Obviously, they have pillaged Georgia and Alabama. And they're just not messing around with little schools. And for the most part, it's not a tried and true formula. If you only drafted LSU, Alabama, and Georgia players, you would miss on guys. But you would probably hit on way more. And I think the Eagles have really, for this organization that kind of prides itself on being very stat-friendly, being very progressive, being ahead of the curve, I think they've just taken a basic approach. Let's just draft the sweetest players from the sweetest programs and try to build our team, around those guys. And for the most part, we'll kick the shit out of other people. And obviously there has to be luck involved, right? Jalen Carter had to fall. But I gave them credit last week of, they have the pieces on their roster. Part of, people, how do you resign Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox? Those guys are over the hill. Well, to mentor a guy like this, Jalen Carter, who could be an all-pro in the NFL. Obviously, you need teams to pass on Nolan Smith, and maybe you benefited from his injury this year for him falling in the draft. But when he was available, you just draft him. You don't go, well, should we take this tight end from South Dakota State, or should we take this, kind of rotational guy from the, Florida Atlantic? No, you just take the dude from Georgia. You just drafted, who's the best defense in the country last year? It was Michigan, it was Georgia, it was Illinois. Let's just take one guy from there. And when you do that, I think it simplifies some of your misses. A couple years ago, it's we need a fast wide. Let's take Jalen Reagor. Yeah, should have just taken Justin Jefferson. The best team. He was one of the best players on that team. And they've done that literally ever since. And when you watch them play, they have talent everywhere. So credit for the Eagles for just simplifying the math. And last but not least, number 5, the AFC versus the NFC. One story that happened, I guess this would have been on the first round. Lamar signed the contract. I think we all acknowledge the AFC South is going to have 3 teams that are not going to be very good. The Jags are going to be solid. They should be a playoff team for the foreseeable future. Star quarterback, star coach. The AFC North now, kind of has some stability. Steelers have their young quarterback, and they were really coming on at the end of the season. I think we view that team they should be in the mix to be a wild card team. There are no excuses of why isn't Lamar playing? He would do this if he didn't have a contract. He's not battling through injuries. You pay him, no excuses now. He's healthy, he plays, even banged up, he plays in big games. I feel much better about the stability of the Ravens. And obviously the Bengals, are fucking awesome. The Bills, awesome. Now they need to be better in the playoffs, but regular season team, they've proven year after year after year, they're just going to win that division, and they're going to be sweet. Same with the Chiefs. So the AFC is just stacked. We know Herbert and the Chargers, always underachieve a little bit, but you're talking 10, 11 win team. The Miami Dolphins, if they can just keep Tua erect, we saw how dynamic their offense was and how awesome Mike McDaniel was as an offensive coordinator. Listen, say what you want about Belichick. He'll just be feisty. He's not, even if his team's not as talented as it was for a long period of time, he's still Bill freaking Belichick. I haven't even mentioned the Jets and Rodgers. The AFC is stupid stacked. There are going to be really good teams, just like last year, that missed the playoffs even with this 7th added team. I don't think anything changed in the NFC. I think there's 3 teams that are clearly better than the rest of the conference, just like last year. The Eagles, 49ers, and the Cowboys. And clearly the Eagles lost a sweet defensive tackle. The 49ers stole him. And then they replaced him with Jalen Carter. And, they added a pass rusher in Nolan Smith, right? And you look at the Cowboys, like, what are their problems? Run defense. Added a sweet defensive tackle from Michigan immediately. The 49ers, well, got some questions at quarterback. They signed Sam Darnold, and Brock Purdy expects to be fully healthy. And their roster is already sweet. And they have some young players like, guys they drafted last year. Ty Davis-Price, the running back from LSU. Danny Gray, the third-round wide receiver, who's an excellent special team player from SMU. And it was a long weekend. The USC pass rusher, Drake Jackson, last year, who started being inactive toward the end of the season. They're very bullish on him, big off season. So they should get some young players they drafted last year, start impacting the team this year to go with Hargrave. Those 3 teams are head and shoulders above the rest of the conference. Minnesota is worse. The Giants, they won all those 1-score games. And I still think they're a year or 2 away from having a legitimate roster. We saw what happens when they played a really good team. They got curb stomped. Now, I'm not acting like the Giants won't be in the playoff mix, but, the Lions, Jared Goff just going to have back-to-back good seasons. How's Dan Campbell going to do with the pressure? Now the pressure, everyone's going to pick them to win the division, myself included. But how Dan Campbell actually, does he get a little tight? It was easy to stay loose this year. Remember, they started off really slow. They started winning games when they were, I think, 1-4. Well, what's it like game 1? Hey, man, everyone thinks you're going to be an 11-win team. And you're, in a weird way, teams are coming after you. You ain't sleepwalking on anybody. Teams are showing up knowing you guys are good. The AFC South, Tampa made the playoffs last year, obviously at 8-9. They're done. I don't view the Falcons as that good. The Saints, in theory, should be a lot better, because they add Derek Carr. Did Derek Carr just have a bad season because of Josh McDaniels? Or is his career just trending the wrong way? Because I do believe the Saints should win the division, but I can't feel confident about betting on a Dennis Allen leading a team as the head coach. So it's just the AFC, has 10 good teams and obviously multiple powerhouses in the Chiefs and the Bengals. And if the Bills are the 3rd best team in your conference, you're in pretty good shape. Right now, the Chiefs and Bengals beat them, but it takes those 2 teams to knock the Bills out. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think the Jets are coming. I do. Same with the Jags. The NFC, it's just Cowboys, Niners, Eagles.